SharePoint and OneDrive are where collaboration happens, and where data can quietly leak. In this lesson, we'll harden sharing, sync, devices, sensitive sites, and access controls using Microsoft 365's Zero Trust security stack. At this point, the course moves from security foundations into real collaboration workloads. Architecture, identity, threat protection, governance, and device controls all converge in SharePoint and OneDrive, where sensitive content is created, shared, synced, and protected every day. SharePoint and OneDrive security works as a stack, not a single switch. SharePoint usually holds shared business spaces, such as team sites, project content, intranet pages, and connected apps. OneDrive holds user-owned work files. Protection starts at the tenant, then narrows through site settings, library controls, permissions, sharing links, labels, access rules, and device posture. Risk increases when external sharing, anonymous links, unmanaged devices, or sync are allowed without boundaries. A hardened design layers controls, so one mistake does not expose everything. Identity, data, device, and monitoring all reinforce each other. External sharing should be treated as a ceiling, not as a set of independent switches. The tenant policy defines the maximum exposure allowed across Microsoft 365, including SharePoint and OneDrive. From there, each site can only tighten the rules. It cannot open sharing beyond the tenant boundary. That distinction matters because collaboration risk varies. A general project site may allow moderate external sharing, while a finance, legal, client, or executive site should be more restricted. OneDrive is often kept equal to or tighter than SharePoint because it is user-driven and harder to oversee. Choosing a sharing link means choosing an exposure level. Anyone links are convenient, but they allow anonymous access, so hardened environments usually disable them or apply strict expiration and download limits. Guest links are better, but still depend on external identities being managed correctly. Organization links may feel safe, yet a forwarded internal link can spread access much wider than intended. For sensitive work, specific people links are the strongest default because access is tied to named users. Pair that default with least privilege permissions, expiration, and download controls. Anonymous links need special care because they operate outside normal identity controls. Treat them as exceptions, not defaults. For finance, HR, legal, executive content, intellectual property, and other sensitive areas, disable anyone links wherever possible. When there is a valid business need, make the link short-lived, view only by default, and block download where supported. Safer defaults help prevent accidental broad publishing. Then review anonymous sharing through reports, audit logs, and security checks. The goal is simple: reduce exposure, keep access accountable, and catch risky links early. Guest sharing works best when it follows a clear life cycle. First, decide which external organizations are trusted, using allow lists or block lists for partners, vendors, and contractors. Then align SharePoint and OneDrive sharing with Entra ID B2B collaboration rules. Next, set expiration, so guest access ends when the engagement ends, instead of lingering indefinitely. Finally, use access reviews for active sites, groups, and Teams-connected workspaces. The goal is not to stop collaboration. It is to make external access intentional, time-bound, and regularly validated by the business. Permissions should flow from the broadest container down to the smallest item, unless there is a strong reason to break inheritance. Start with Microsoft 365 groups, security groups, or SharePoint groups, not individual users, so access remains manageable. Then assign clear roles. Owners administer, members collaborate, visitors read, and guests receive only what the business requires. Unique permissions should be the exception, because every exception becomes harder to audit. For sensitive sites, routinely review broken inheritance, direct file access, and external access before they become hidden security gaps. Sensitivity labels are not only for individual files. In Microsoft Purview, they can also classify collaboration containers, including SharePoint sites, Microsoft 365 groups, and teams. This matters because the container often defines who can participate, whether guests are allowed, how links are shared, and what happens from unmanaged devices. A public workspace may allow broader sharing, while confidential or highly confidential spaces should enforce tighter defaults. The goal is consistency. When teams, groups, and connected SharePoint sites carry the same risk, the same governance rules follow automatically. Consider a finance M&A site where deal models, legal drafts, and executive approvals live together. Standard SharePoint permissions may not be enough, because one overly broad group or sharing link can expose highly sensitive work. Restricted access control adds a second gate. Only approved users or groups can enter, even if other permissions appear to allow access. Pair that with sensitivity labels, conditional access, and a very small set of trusted owners. Then monitor membership, sharing changes, and access activity. Treat these sites as privileged collaboration spaces, not ordinary team workspaces. Hardening is not a one-time configuration exercise. It has to be validated continuously. Start with SharePoint sharing reports to find external shares, anonymous links, and current access. Use Microsoft Purview audit logs when you need the timeline: who shared what, who opened files, what permissions changed, and which admin actions occurred. For sensitive sites, use Entra ID access reviews to confirm guests and group members still belong. The key is cadence. High-risk collaboration spaces need recurring reviews, so permission drift and stale access are caught before they become incidents. When a user opens SharePoint or OneDrive, device trust changes the access decision. On a managed and compliant device, normal collaboration can continue. On an unmanaged device, the risk increases. Files could be downloaded, cached, printed, or synced beyond IT control. For that scenario, use restricted access. Allow browser-only access, block downloads and printing where supported, and prevent local sync. For highly sensitive sites, go further with sensitivity labels, conditional access, or site-level rules. The goal is not maximum friction everywhere. It is risk-based access. Conditional access is where zero trust becomes operational for SharePoint and OneDrive. Start by defining who and what the policy covers, especially sensitive sites or high-risk users. Then target the SharePoint and OneDrive cloud apps. Add conditions such as sign-in risk, location, device platform, and client app, and decide which controls are required. For trusted work, require a compliant or hybrid joined device. For browser access, use session controls such as app-enforced restrictions or Defender for cloud apps. Validate in report-only mode first, then roll out in stages. OneDrive Sync is useful, but it changes the risk model because cloud files can become persistent local copies. The objective is to let trusted devices sync while blocking unmanaged devices, personal accounts, and unauthorized tenants. Use Intune, OneDrive admin settings, and conditional access together. Require compliant or domain-joined devices, enable files on demand, control known folder move, and limit sync to approved tenants. Then, validate the experience operationally. Test compliant and non-compliant devices, attempt personal account sync, review audit logs, and confirm users still have a workable workflow. SharePoint and OneDrive hardening works best as a layered model. Make external sharing deliberate. Protect sensitive sites with labels, permissions, reviews, and auditing. Reduce leakage through device access and sync controls. The same mindset now carries forward. Collaboration should stay productive, but access must be governed, monitored, and limited where risk increases. Next, we apply this to Exchange Online.